Alrighty, let's prepare to retake our assessment. So remember, you only need to correct the ones that you got wrong. So if you want to skip through the video and find the ones that you got wrong, remember this is to prepare. So fully watch each one that you need to work on. All right, so we're going to start. It says Georgina works on the 30th floor of an office building. She took the elevator to the cafeteria on the 7th floor. How many floors did she travel? So we know it's the 30th floor and the 70th floor. Those are both positive. If we think about a building, right, the 30th floor is here and the 7th floor is here. What we're trying to do is find this space right here. So when we are trying to find the space between two things, it's called the difference, right? What's the difference of their height? What's the difference of the elevation? So when we're trying to find space between two things, it's always the difference. So we're going to take our positive 30 and subtract 7. Now, I do like to add the opposite just because we need to practice that skill, right? Keep, change, change. Two things have to change. So we are going to subtract. I'm not changing my problem. I'm just setting up the standard version that you learned. We're going to borrow, and then we get 23. So that's why the answer was B. So number 2 is a little tricky because there's a lot of problems you need to do. So we're going to go through each one. I'll even use a different color for each one to prove why the answer is what it is. So we'll start with A. So A, the first thing I would do is just change anything I need to its opposite, right? So this is subtraction, so I'm going to keep the 4, change the subtraction to addition, and then change the number behind it. We say keep, change, change. And I only change this with subtraction. Notice I didn't do anything with the plus part. So now we can see that -3 and -4 are the same sign. I'm going to write this down here. Since they're the same sign, we add and keep the sign. Then I'm going to go plus 2. Now, -7 and +2 are different signs, so I'm going to subtract. 7 take away 2 is 5, and then I keep this sign of the greater absolute value, and that's how we get -5. Another way we can think about this is I learned this little T-chart. This might help some of you. So for the first part, it's -3. Oops, that's not right. Might help if I show the skill right. -3, so I put it here. It's -4, so I put it here. Since they're on the same side, I just add them together and keep the sign that they're in. So then I can do it with this one as well, right? So T-chart, 7 is negative, 2 was positive. Since they're on different signs, that sides of the T-chart, that's why I subtract them, and I keep the sign of the one that's bigger. So since 7 is bigger and it's negative, that's why I kept the sign. Okay, so this T-chart might help some of you as well. I'm going to use another color. So that was for A. Now let's do B. B, I'll use blue. So -3, add the opposite because it's a minus. Now it becomes +4. I'm going to also add the opposite here because I want to change all those subtractions to addition. Okay, so remember I kept, changed, changed, and then I kept, changed, changed. So I'm going to go -3 plus 4. So if I use this T-chart, 4 goes here because it's positive, 3 goes here because it's negative. They're on opposite signs, so I subtract. Right, you can even put a little subtraction sign. 4 take away 3 is 1, but because 4 is bigger, we keep the positive. Okay, so then I have 1 plus 2. Okay, well, hopefully we can do that. That's just 3. Okay, we can use the T-chart as well, and it would show us if they're on the same side. All right, I'm going to use another color for C. So keep, because this is addition, I'm not going to do anything, but you can see here this is subtraction, so I'm going to go keep, change, change. So I have -3 plus -4. So if I use that T-chart, I put 4 and 3 on the same side because they're both negative. So I'm going to add them when they're on the same side, and that's how I get 7, but it's negative because they're both on the negative side. And then I'm going to go plus negative 2. So if I just kind of extend this t-chart, 7 is negative, 2 is negative, so I put it on the negative side. I add them together, I get 9, but because they're both on the negative side, I use the negative. So that's why this one is negative 9. All right, and then I'm going to use one more color, try to make it different. We'll use orange. So there's a subtraction, so I'm going to keep, change, change. There's a subtraction, so I'm going to keep this here, right here, and then change, change. So negative 3 plus 4. So if I use this t-chart, the 3 goes here, the 4 goes here. Then we're opposite signs, so I'm going to subtract. I get 1, but because 4 has a greater absolute value, I use the positive. Then I'm going to go plus negative 2. So again, I can use the t-chart, plus, negative. 1 goes here, 2 goes there because it's negative. I'm going to subtract. 2 minus 1 is 1. But because now the 2 is greater, I'm going to use negative. So this answer is negative 1. And so now we can see that we have negative 5, negative 9, negative 1. The only one that's positive is B, and that's why this came out as B. Maybe that t-shirt helped explain those rules a little bit, right? Opposite signs, so we subtract. You can use that method on the quiz if you would like. All right, which of the following with the number line models of the number line below? So one thing we want to make sure we do is, I think what confused people was these double minus signs. So if we add the opposite, we can see right away that 1 plus 5, that's actually 6, and I'm definitely not at 6. I ended at negative 4. This is 1 plus 4, and that's 5. So you can see I definitely did not end at positive 5. So those two can just be canceled out, because if I use my add the opposite, my keep, change, change, then I can see that that's not even the right problem. So now we just have these two. So if I start at 1 and count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's how I then know it is B. Okay? That technically could have been a reason. Another reason why we canceled out letter D, because if you count how many times you moved, you definitely didn't move 4. Okay? So letter D can get kicked out twice. Once because it actually comes out as positive 5, which is way over here. And then the other reason is because it's not even 4 jumps, it is 5. So we technically should cancel out that twice. With that too, since this is 5 jumps, that cancels out A as well. So we need to make sure when we do this, we count those jumps. And that's it. That's it for 3. Just make sure you're counting those jumps, and then maybe even check that, hey, what happens when I add the opposite on these? All right, number 4, Danielle is playing a game. She started with 10 points. So that's a positive 10. This is a good way to do story problems, is write down symbols as you go. In the first round, she lost 20 points, so that's negative. Losing is negative. And then in the second round, she won 40 points. Winning is positive. So then it says, which of the following shows changes in Danielle's score? So we can right away cancel out C and D, because we know that she has 10 points. And so that means she couldn't have been in the negative already. So C and D can't cancel out right away. We then just have to decide if it's A or B. Well, 20 is negative on both of them, which is what we wanted, because, right, I wrote negative 20 there with 20. A negative sign with the 20. So we just need to decide, is it plus 45 or minus 45? And if you already went and wrote your symbols down, you would see that, hey, 45 should be positive, and that's why it should be A. So this is another good strategy for story problems, is go and write down the symbols that represent those numbers right away, not before we look at the problems. And then also cross off things that don't make sense, right? This is another great strategy. I knew that 10 had to be positive. Why would I choose C and D when it clearly shows that 10 is negative? So use that strategy as well. I used it in 3 to help get rid of things too. All right, which one has the following has the same value as this? So the first thing I would do is not even worry about what this value is. I would actually go and add the opposite on every single problem that's subtraction, because then I can actually compare them, because this is a plus problem, right? It's negative 10 plus negative 3. And if I'm trying to compare it to subtraction problems, I might get concerned. So now we just need to check the signs. So if we look on A, it actually perfectly matches. As soon as I switch it to add the opposite, I'm done. I don't even have to find the value. I can check the other ones. On B, it's -10 and +3. Well, that's not a +3, that's a -3, so it can't be B. If I look at C, it's -3, so that matches, but you can then see that the 10 is actually positive, and that 10 is negative, so it can't be C. And then we can see that actually D now perfectly matches C. I already crossed off C, but we can check that as well. It's -3, that's a good match, but this is now +10, and I need a -10, so it definitely can't be D. So that's another way to do that. All right, what number can be added to -4 to get the sum of 0? Well, we can cross off C right away because we haven't done anything with fractions. So that goes away. That should make you feel good, right? Just get rid of answers that you know don't work. We should cross off B because we know that if we add things together, 0 plus anything is still the thing, right? So B can't be our choice. So we need to now decide if it's A or D. Sum means add, right? So if I have -4 plus something, it's going to equal 0. Okay, that's what I'm looking for. What fits in here? So this is about our additive inverse, learning, remember how to add opposites and things like that. That's what this whole point is. So I could actually use my T-chart that I was using earlier. If you didn't check problem number, what problem was that? There was an earlier problem. Can you remember what problem was? 2. I used this T-chart. So I can use this T-chart to help me with this as well. I know that the 4 in the problem is negative, so I'm going to put that here. And then if I want to check my answers, if I check A, I'm going to use a red for A. Okay, if I check A, I'm going to put it also over here because it's negative. When they are on the same side, we add them together. But if I do 4 plus 4, I actually get 8. That is definitely not 0. So that is why A does not work. Now I can show you how it would work for using letter D. So letter D is +4. I'm going to put the 4 here. See how they're on opposite sides of my T-chart? I'm going to subtract. Well, 4 take away 4 is in fact 0. And so that's why the answer is letter D. And that's how we use that T-chart. I'll continue using the T-chart for some of these as well. All right. So 7 is very similar to question 4. So the first thing we want to do is decide positive, negatives, and what they mean. So this is the hardest thing, is knowing what these words mean. Deposit means to put something inside of something. So you can deposit it into a bank account, you can deposit it into a bowl, but when we put things inside of things, it actually makes that thing get bigger, right? More ingredients in a bowl, more coins inside of a jug, right? Depositing makes things get bigger. So that's a positive. Now, he wrote a check. So writing a check for $20 is that you removed that money out of there. So that's going to be a negative. But we did it again here. So that's actually going to be another negative. See how it says checks, plural. All right, then he deposited, so we deposited again. That's going to be a positive number. Deposit, positive. See how they kind of sound similar? And it says, which of the following represents a change? So again, just match up what symbols we put. So we can't cross anything off yet because the 200 is in positive for every single one, and that's what we put. So can't cross anything off. The next one's a little different. It's negative, negative, positive, positive. If we go back and look at what symbol we wrote for checks 20 to negative, right? We put negative. So since we put negative for 20, we can actually cross off C and D because it's supposed to be a negative, and that represents 20 as a positive. So then if we look at A and B, they are in fact different with 30. 30 is negative, and one of them in B is positive, and we showed that it's supposed to be negative, and so that means we cancel out B, and we are left with A. We can always check the end too. It says deposit 40. It should be positive 40. It is in fact positive 40. And that is another reason why it is A. All right, a submarine's elevation is 14 feet below sea level. Below sea level makes that a negative. A shark is swimming at an elevation of 56 feet below sea level. That means it's also negative. What is the difference in elevation between the submarine and the shark? So we need to kind of draw a picture, right? So here's my submarine. I'm going to write sub because I can't even imagine drawing that. And then here is my shark. Remember if we're trying to find the space in here, okay, we're trying to find the difference between them. Difference is subtraction. So it's openly telling me it's a subtraction problem. So you can see in the picture, the submarine is up higher, so we're going to put that first. And then we want to subtract that negative 56 like this. The first thing I'm going to do is add the opposite. Remember, difference means to subtract. So that's another big part of that is, do we remember this? Difference means subtraction. So I'm going to add the opposite. Now, I'm going to continue using this t-chart. This only works for addition though. I just want to point that out. T-chart only works for addition. If you've watched the video for a couple problems now, you'll notice I'm never using this for subtraction because we don't use subtraction problems. We only use addition problems. So I'm going to put 56 here. I'm going to put 14 here. Since they're on different sides and they're different signs, we will subtract them. And so 6 take away 4 is 2. I just want to erase this a little bit so I have some space. 2. And then 5 take away 1 is 4. And since 56 has a greater absolute value, we're going to make it positive. And that is why it's A. All right, the temperature in Montreal was -8 degrees. In New York, the temperature was 11 degrees. How many degrees warmer was the temperature in New York? So if I think of it like a thermostat, -8 is here. Here's like 0, and then here's 11. And we, again, are trying to find this space right here. How far apart are they? So you can see a couple of times I've drawn this picture. Again, if you've looked at a couple questions now, I keep drawing this picture. This is a subtraction problem. 11 is the bigger number, right? It's the first number, so I'm going to go 11 minus -8. I can't lose that negative. It's -8. I'm going to add the opposite. As soon as I add the opposite, you can see that they're both now positive. I can use this t-chart only for addition. I put 11 here because it's positive. I now put 8 here because it's also positive because that add the opposite situation. When they're on the same side, I add that, and that is how we get 19. And since they're both on the positive side, it stays positive. All right, number 10, what is the value of -2 plus 100 minus -50? First thing I'm going to do is add the opposite. Okay, I'm going to add that opposite because I'm going to change these to addition and subtraction problems. So I'm going to do these in 2 pieces. Right, so I'm going to do piece number 1 here, and then I will do this part after, right? So I'll do that for this first part. So I'm going to, this is the t-chart I've been using. This might help. It kind of helps you remember when we add and when we subtract. Again, only works for addition problems because those are the only type of problems we should be using. So -2 is negative, so I put it on this side. 100 is positive, so I put it on this side. See how they're on opposite sides, so we subtract. 100 take away 2 is 98. I'm just going to erase this a little bit. 98. And since 100 is the bigger number, and we are going to use this sign. So then I now have a new problem, don't I? I have 98 plus 50. Now that is standard arithmetic that you've been doing since elementary school, but just to practice using this t-chart, another skill, plus, minus. I put 98 here because it's positive. I put 50 here because it's positive. When they're on the same side, we add. So I get 8. What was that? 14. And that is why the answer was B. So hopefully this t-chart's helping some of you out. Okay, Danny scored 10 points in the first round of a game. Scored 10 points, that's important. Scored 10 points, that's positive. He then lost 20 points, that's negative. The second round. In the final round, he earned 40 points, that's positive. You need to find Danny's end score. So I'm going to write the problem out. That's what we should do first. So 10 minus 20 plus 40. I'm going to add the opposite. Doing another color so it really sticks out. We're going to add the opposite. And then I'm going to use this t-chart I've been using. So this works for addition only. 10's positive, so it goes here. 20 negative goes on the negative side. Since they're on different sides, we subtract. 20 take away 10 is 10. But because 20 is bigger, we use the negative and it becomes negative 10. So now we have negative 10 plus 40. I can still use the t-chart and run out a little room, but I can maybe slice, sneak one in here. Here we go. So 10 is negative, it goes here. 40 is positive, it goes here. They're on opposite sides of that line are separated, so we have to subtract them. 40 take away 10 is 30, but because 40 is bigger, we use the sign. And so we would say 30 points. All right, Tyrell went to the park to go jogging. The beginning of the running path has an elevation of -2 feet. The highest elevation on the jogging path is 14 feet. What is the difference in the elevation between the highest point and the beginning of the path? So the beginning of the path was -2 feet. The highest point was 14 feet. So -2, +14. And then remember, difference is subtraction. If I draw a picture, right, 14 feet is here, 0 is like here, and -2 is here. And so I'm trying to find this right here. How far apart are they? So 14 take away -2. Add the opposite. When you add the opposite, you can see that they're both positive. And now I can just add them together, and that's why this was 16 feet. I think most of us are getting these wrong because we're forgetting to add the opposite. Keep, change, change. 13. What is the value of -3 plus -10 minus 8? So first thing I'm going to do is go in here and go add the opposite, right? Keep, change, change. Now keep, change, change. So our new problem, and I'll write it right here, is -3 plus 10 plus -8. That's the new problem. I'm going to split this into 2 again like I normally do. And then I'm going to start using this little t-chart because I think this is really helpful maybe for some of you visually. 3 is negative, so it goes here. 10 is positive, so it goes here. They're on different sides, so we subtract. 10 take away 3 is 7. 10 is a bigger number, so we use that. So +7. So now we have 7 plus -8. If I use this t-chart again, plus, negative, 7 is positive, 8 negative, opposite side, so we subtract. 8 take away 7 is 1. 8 is a bigger number, so we use that sign. And that's why this was a -1. Signs are important. I think that's another thing, is that we're just ignoring what these signs are, and having money and owing money is very different than, having money and owing money are two very different things. So we need to make sure we're keeping those signs around. All right, last one. Janaeus deposited, that's positive, $400 in her bank account. A couple days later, she withdrew 50, that's minus, withdrew, take away, remove. The next day, she deposited 20 more, so plus. And later, a day later, she withdrew, that's negative. So the biggest thing I saw was people weren't reading all the directions. So the first thing is it says we have to write an expression. And then it says period. So we really can't do anything until we do that. So we gotta write the problem. I wrote all my signs out, so that's really gonna help. So 400 is positive, 50 is negative, so just write minus 50, positive 20, negative 150. So notice that I was able to write out my problem just by using the signs I wrote down. Now I need to evaluate the change. And if you look at your rubric, it says work, correct, work. So we have to show our work or we don't get all those points. So I'm going to do the work off to the side and then break it down into pieces. I like to, like I said, add the opposite. I think it's really good practice for you guys. Keep, change, change. Don't have to do anything with this one because it's plus sign, and then keep, change, change. I'm going to continue using that t-chart I've been using. So if you haven't seen it yet, I'm going to explain it. So I go plus sign, negative sign, I'm going to do the first two numbers. So I'm going to 400 is positive, so it goes on the positive side. 50 is negative, so it goes on the negative side. Okay? When they're separated like this, right, opposite signs, we subtract them. So 400, you need to set it up this way, standard, right? Borrow. I don't know why I borrowed there. Aha, that's funny. Sorry. That's just 0. This is 5, and this is 3. 400 has a greater absolute value, so it stays positive. Then we go plus 20. I'm going to use another color. So 350 is positive, so it goes here. 20 is positive, so it goes here. See how they're both positive. Now they're on the same side, so I can just add them together. And when I add them together, I get, oops, I didn't want that color. I'm changing colors. 0, 7, 3. And it's positive because you can see they're on the positive side. And then I'm going to go plus negative 150. And then I'm going to use my t-shirt. So 370 was positive. If it helps, you can even draw little lines in here, separate the problems. 150 was negative. They're on opposite signs, so I subtract. I'm going to definitely need to set up my algorithm problem like in elementary school. 0, 2, 2. And because 370 is positive, we would say, right, 220, and then we'd say it changed $220. And that's everything that was being looked for in question 14. Okay, remember, you have to write down everything work-wise to help you prepare for this test. And then when you're done, you can show it to me and retake your quiz.